Today I'm going to talk to you about some books. I am a real reader. Hope you are too. So let me go ahead and give you my latest ones I read on my most recent vacation. And I kind of have this cool habit. When I get ready to go on a trip, I usually start a novel, typically a hardcover one, before I go on the trip. And I just get a little bit into it because that way when I come home from a trip, I can start to read that again. I know I should use a Kindle. I know my husband would love that, but I'm just not interested. I really like the feel of books. So then when I'm on the trip, I read paperbacks. And then if I'm finished with all those paperbacks, then I start the hardcover one, or complete the hardcover when I get home. That's a trick. All right, so here's the first book. This one's called Resurrection by Danielle Steele. Well, Danielle Steele's been around forever. She's a very prolific writer, a best-selling writer. Actually, all the ones I'm talking about today are going to be New York Times bestsellers, just by the way. And the story Resurrection is the story of this woman who is married to this man. She's an influencer, and he is a busy entrepreneur, and they end up, they have a marriage of 20 years, and they have 2 children, twins. And what happens is this is set post COVID, the COVID pandemic, and then but then there was a subsequent pandemic. That was a short-lived one, in Europe. Well, it's actually in the world, so I think it was somewhat fictitious. But anyway, in that story, that just sort of gives you that feeling of, the need to be socially distancing and all the things that we all experienced during the pandemic. So there's a little bit of that. It only went on for 6 months, but then during that time, there was a lot of drama between the husband and wife. Kind of some trauma happened in their marriage, and then the daughters were all separate, and then the kind of the various crises happened to several of them during the story, and in the end, it kind of comes together in a decent way, kind of an appropriate way, I guess. And the concept of resurrection is basically that in the face of all the destruction that occurred with the pandemic and the marriage having issues and the fact that good things came out of it, that was sort of the resurrection concept. So it's a good book. I liked it a lot. It was easy to read and easy, fun, good book to read. Okay, this next one is by Lynn Painter. It's called Made for Each Other. Okay, so it kind of reminds me of the story with Jennifer Lopez, the movie, Made in Manhattan, sort of, just somewhat. Basically, this rich guy has an apartment that he's never around in because he's always traveling the world. And he has this woman here who's this cleaning lady that he never sees or has actually never met. And so she cleans his house every week, and she has an apartment. She's actually going to school, I believe. And so she does this housekeeping just as a way to make money while she's going to school. And then what happens is she ends up, her apartment gets infested with some kind of bug, so she can't stay there. So rather than, contact this man, she decides that she knows he's out of town, so why don't I just stay at his place and clean his place, for a week while the house is being debugged. And so she does that, which seems like kind of a good idea, sort of, except that next morning she wakes up and lo and behold, her the parents of this guy are actually visiting. Who knew? And more importantly, they were not at all surprised to meet Abby, because it turns out he'd been telling his family that he has a girlfriend named Abby, which was obviously fictitious and just kind of coincidental. So she was sort of surprised and kind of played along. And then he comes back to town and says, whoa, what were you doing in my house? And all kinds of drama. And then they decide that maybe to get his parents off his case, she could temporarily, pretend like she's his girlfriend, since she knows a lot about his life, sort of, and see if they could just take care of that until the parents are out of town. So that's what she does. And then the story kind of unfolds from there. Lots of layers and levels. And it was good. It was a very good story. I enjoyed it a lot. I couldn't actually put it down. So it was, kind of always those they call them the billionaire romances, but it was good. So take a peek at this one, Made for Each Other by Lynn Painter. Okay. All right, the next one. Oh, I like this a lot. This was called The Spirit of Love by Lauren Kate. And this was a surprise. Like when you look at this cover, these couple walking down the beach, they say that covers sell books, for people like me who like to read books versus Kindles. And this looked cute to me when I saw it in the new releases section of the library. I think I got it from, or maybe, I think that's where I got it from, because I was going out of town and wanted to grab a paperback. So this book was so good, and it was a surprise, because I just thought it would just be a love story. but it turns out it was a lot more mystical, I guess is how I would say. Not mystical in a like spooky way or witchy way, but basically what happens is this woman has had a long time career as a kind of an assistant for a series that had been going on for a number of years. And she was, excellent writer. And she finally got promoted to become, I believe, the director. And so she gets that position offered to her, and she's all excited, and she's finally earned it. And, the cast is all excited, and all the support staff's excited. And she decides to go celebrate for a weekend before, the onslaught of the whole actual season. She goes on this by herself. And lo and behold, at the camping location, she ends up meeting this lovely man. And she, ends up caring for him. But during that weekend, some circumstances occur that are, kind of dramatic. And it's on Catalina Island, which is, just a short boat ride or ferry ride away from where she lives in California. So what happens is she goes home, thinks she's not sure she's ever going to see this guy again, but she decides to go on to her, get back to work. Gets back to work, and lo and behold, her staff or her the powers that be took away the position for various reasons that she had actually won, and deserved. And now the man who replaced her turns out had a lot of similar features to the guy she fell for on the island. And so then the story, it kind of develops, and she actually helps this guy to direct, and there's a lot of background story to that, and a lot of explanations of how it works to make a show. That was kind of interesting. And then the ties that occur, and to this man and this other man come to light. So it's kind of interesting, very captivating story. Some great surprises. I loved it. So take a look at this one. I enjoyed this a lot. It's called The Spirit of Love by Lauren Kate. All right, that's the third one. Okay, this next one, I'm going to show you 5. This one's called Flirting Lessons by Jasmine, Guillory, I think you say. Now, I've read books by this author before, and I have loved her. I think she's really interesting, fun writer to read. But this was a story I'd never read before. This was the 2 main characters were women. And basically the story was that this one woman had been, she was dating men and had a bad breakup. And then she thought she might actually have some bisexual tendencies. And so she decided to interact with some of her friends that were gay, lesbian women. And she actually made friends with one of them who offered, when she found out that this woman may have some interest in women, she decided to help her because this woman felt that she wouldn't know how to flirt with women appropriately. And so this one woman said, I'll teach you, don't worry. And that's where the whole story unfolds from, Flirting Lessons. It was a great story, very interesting, some steamy love scenes. And it was just another perspective that I hadn't had. So it was great. So I'd read it if I were you. Jasmine Guillory's Flirting Lessons. Great. Okay, last but not least, this is so fun. This is called The True Love Experiment. Okay, by Christina Lauren. I've read multiple books by these 2 authors. They're actually 2 different women. One is called Christina Hobbs, and the other one is Lauren Billings. And they write as a team. Isn't that cute? And so anyway, this True Love Experiment basically is a story of this woman. Her name's Fizzy. I forget what the Fizzy, how it's derived from. But anyway, she's a cute woman who is a romance novelist. Have you ever noticed that in like Hallmark novels, Hallmark movies, and a lot of love stories, frequently some of the characters are novelists, so this is a woman who was a very successful romance novelist, but she'd never really experienced the romance for herself. And so she decided that the thing to do was to try and come up with some other ways of trying to feel more, actual love presence in her life. And she wasn't sure how that was going to go, and she was having some writer's block on her next book, and it was kind of a bad time for her. So what she decided to do, she wasn't sure what she was going to do, but then coincidentally, there was a man, and he was a director, and he was a guy who wrote, he did documentaries, like nature documentaries, but his budgets were getting cut, and his powers that be said, listen, we need to do something different, like a romance something. And you better make it work, and we'll give you a big budget. But if you don't do that, we're going to have to cut you loose from the documentary making. So he didn't know what to do, and was just kind of bumbling around trying to come up with some ideas. And then he was good friends with his ex-wife. Okay. And so then what his ex-wife, it turns out, was had a pretty robust career, and she apparently was very taken with this Fizzy, this woman. That was her favorite novelist that she always liked to read. Had whole bookshelves. So when he was over visiting his ex-wife to pick up his daughter, he saw these books and started asking her some questions about it, kind of not thinking it would be really worthwhile. But push came to shove, and she said, hey, she's great. She's terrific. You know what you're talking about, but, kind of berating me for liking these romance novels, because not for nothing, romance novels are the most popular genre of any literature ever sold, have been for years. And so he thought about it and thought, well, maybe I'll try and contact this one. So he manages to contact Fizzy and propose to her that they do sort of a bachelorette kind of a series, where she kind of, meets a bunch of men and then figures out who she'll go on a trip with at the end of it, because she's going to fall for it. Fizzy, remember, she's going through writer's block. She's feeling kind of grumpy because she's feeling kind of bad. And she's also thinking this guy is arrogant, but she's like, yeah, whatever. And so she says, well, maybe what I could do is, I guess I could possibly, be a part of this, because she gets some money, and it might give her some inspiration. She said, maybe I could do this, but I'll do it only if I can tell you the types of men I'd like to have, represented in the, the 10 bachelors that I'm going to have to, sort through. And, like some old boyfriend and some, bad boy and some nerd and some, a Romeo guy, all these different characters. And so the director agreed to that, and he put together the list, and then she got to sort through those. And there was sort of an interesting twist that occurred. It was really cool. And so, in this whole evolution, because remember the director was disbelieving, the girl was disillusioned by her career, and then all these men come back in her life, and she gets to kind of sort through what really works for her and what lights her up, and does any of this light her up. So it's a great story. I enjoyed it. You should read it. This team is really fun. This Christina, Lauren. I'm going to go back and get some more books by them today, I think. So there you go. That's what I got for you. Thanks so much for watching. I'm Dr. Julie Marshall. I have a blog called Dr. Julie's Fun Life. It'll be linked below. The books will be linked below. Please follow me if you have any friends that are good readers of primarily love stories. Also, I do self-help stories. I do cookbooks. Those are my favorites. Here's some biographies. So if any of those interest you, please tell your friends and sort through and follow me. So thanks so much for watching, and have a great day. Happy reading.